So this video could benefit you if you're a controller player or a new player to Warzone, as we're going to go over what are the best long range, low recoil weapons that are currently inside Warzone after the Reloaded update. If you enjoy weapon stat breakdowns and weapon comparisons and overall tips and tricks for Warzone, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we try to reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers, and also click that link in the description down below and subscribe to our second channel. We do post extra content over there as well. So we already have a few contenders in mind of what are the lowest recoil weapons, but what we want to do is take a deeper dive into the recoil pattern to see which one is actually the best. So we're going to give you like what are the top 3 low recoil rifles. But the first thing I do want to quickly show you is that the C58 did get a nerf today, and it got a nerf to its 4x optic. So the 4x optic used to help when it comes to the recoil on the C58. And jgod's already done the testing on this for us, so I don't actually need to test this again, but it has been fixed. So as you can see here, this was before the update, so this was the recoil if you use the 4x optic. And now after the update, it's pretty much exactly the same. Now, it isn't very good quality here. This is being screenshotted from his video, but as you can see, the lines are pretty visible, so you can see that it's pretty much the same height now. So there's no real reason to use the 4x optic on the C58. And on top of that, that makes the C58 less viable when it comes to low recoil weapons. So now let's talk about some low recoil weapons, giving you some builds, and then what we'll do is we'll take a deeper look at the actual specific recoil pattern for all of these weapons inside Plunder, and I'll show you how to control the recoil on them as well. So the first one is actually the BRUEN MK9. Now I've talked about the BRUEN in our LMG video, and I do think this is the best LMG in the game right now. It has a good balance of TTK as well as recoil control. Next up is a gun that I only used when I started playing Warzone at the very beginning, and that's because it pretty much had no recoil whatsoever. And it still pretty much has no recoil, but it also has a really good TTK now because they did give this gun a buff with the Reloaded update. And like I said, we'll have a look at TTKs, but the build is on screen just now. This is the build you do want to use for the M13. Next, we have a gun that really probably shouldn't be here, but it's the MILANO. And if you use this build right here, this is the long range build for the MILANO. And the reason why the MILANO is this good and it's as good as long range is because its TTK is very competitive, and on top of that, the recoil is very easily managed. Next, we have a gun that's came back into the mix here, and that's the M4A1. This has been a really popular gun. It's always been really viable inside Warzone. Everyone's always been able to use this gun. It's not been like a terrible weapon, but now it's definitely one of the best long-range rifles in the game at the moment. Now, similar to the M13, everyone wanted to use the GRAU at the start of Warzone, and that's because it had very little recoil, and it still does. And then on top of that, it did get a minimum damage buff, so that means the damage is going to hit harder at longer ranges, and we'll have a look at that in just a moment. We then have the FARA as well, which is probably one of the more popular rifles inside the game at the moment. This is the main gun most people have been using just because it's got such a quick TTK. It's one of the best time to kills at long range in the game at the moment. And on top of that, it has pretty low recoil too. But I do think there's a weapon that's slightly better than this, and that is the KRIG. The KRIG has just almost no recoil whatsoever, and it does have a competitive TTK. Now, it's not quite as good as the FARA, but you're going to be landing way more shots with the FARA, and I've been outgunned by this gun so many times whilst I've been using the FARA, and I've been wondering what gun is it that I've been getting killed by. So now let's quickly take a look at some TTKs. Now, we're mainly focusing on the long range TTKs here, so that's after the guns drop off. So we're talking about 40 to 50 or 40 to maybe 80 meters here. This is where most of your gunfights with these weapons are going to take place. So you've got all the weapons that I've shown you earlier on. So now on the True Game Data website, we haven't attached any attachments on here, and that's because they haven't got all the attachment builds yet. So we're just using the base weapon for now, but it still gives you a really good idea of how these guns perform. So as you can see, the GRAU is the slowest killing weapon at 822 milliseconds at long range, landing only chest shots. Then we've got the M13, which is slightly faster than the GRAU. So like I said, even at chest shots only, the M13 performs really well, but if you do land a headshot in the mix, the KRIG is then slightly faster at 736. I mean, the M4 was 742. Then we have the BRUEN that kills a little bit quicker than the both of them at 705 milliseconds, which is a pretty competitive TTK. And then as you can see, we've got the MILANO and the FARA at about 680 millisecond TTKs, and that's why the MILANO is so viable at long range at the moment, is because its TTK is just way too competitive at those longer distances. So what we're going to do now is test all of these weapons inside Plunder for recoil, and on top of that, we're going to show you how to control the recoil on all these guns the best. So we're going to go through every single weapon here in Plunder. What I'm going to do is on this side, I'm going to fire the weapon by itself and just let it do its thing. And then over here, we'll actually try and control the recoil of the weapon as well. And we'll let you know which one is the easiest to control. Now, just for a bit of idea, I'm a 1.4 KD player, so if I can control the recoil on one of these guns, that means pretty much anyone can. So first of all, we'll start off with the FARA, and then the second weapon I have here is the KRIG. Now, for the FARA, let's take a look at the recoil pattern. So as you can see, it did go off of the wall there, but as you can see, it goes up, slightly to the left, and then slightly to the right again. So to control this is kind of difficult, and as much as it looks like an easy recoil pattern to manage, it's actually not that easy. And I'll show you right here. So I'm going to pull down, try and pull slightly down to the right, and then down to the left. It's going to be a bit tough, but let's try it. And as you can see, this is at 30, I mean, if I ping it properly, this is going to be at 30 meters here. And as you can see, this is the best I can control the recoil with the FARA. So I've tried my absolute best to control the recoil. Now let's try the KRIG, which I believe to be pretty much the best long range rifle in the game at the moment. So this is the recoil pattern. So as you can see, it fires much slower, which makes it a lot easier to control. It goes up or to the right, and then after that, it's kind of straight, more or less. And we'll try and control the recoil pattern on the KRIG. And as you can see, this gun does not move at all. Like, that, compared to that, at a long range distance, you probably doesn't really make too much. But as you can see, me trying the best as I can to control the KRIG, control the FARA, sorry. And the KRIG was just so much easier to do. And I feel like for most people, the KRIG is just going to be the easy shout for recoil control. So here we are again, and this time round we've got the M4A1 and we have the GRAU, and we'll quickly start with the M4. I think most of us know what the recoil on the M4 is like, but we'll quickly show you anyway. And as you can see, it goes up and to the right, and it will probably carry on off the screen as well. But we'll try and control the M4 recoil now. Now it's pretty straightforward. All you need to do is drag down and to the left a little bit. And as you can see, I'm struggling to do that. Because it's fire rate, it's quite high, it's quite tough to control it. But I could try again here, and we'll see if we can do a little bit better. So, not that much better, right? So, it was around about this area here for the first recoil pattern. Now, the GRAU is pretty much the king when it comes to easy recoil patterns to manage. It goes up and to the right, but it's not quite as hard as the M4, and we'll show you it here just now. And it has a slightly slower rate of fire as well, which makes it much easier to control. But we all know the GRAU has pretty much zero recoil. It's just so satisfying to use because you know you can keep it in literally the exact same place, which is pretty much this little cluster here. And then the M4 was like round about there, round about this circle just here. So as you can see, the GRAU is definitely easier than the M4 to control. So we're back again now, and we've got the M13 as well as the MILANO, and we're going to try the M13 again. We're going to show you the recoil pattern for this gun, and as you can see, it goes up and to the right, up and to the right, up and to the right. It's a pretty consistent recoil pattern. Now, it might look a bit tough to control, but it is actually pretty straightforward. So let's have a look at controlling the recoil on this gun. So it is pretty easy to control at long range, and you're not really going to mess with this gun all that much. Now, let's do the MILANO as well. So this is up and to the right as well. So again, another easy recoil pattern to manage for most people. Up and to the right is like the best one to control. So let's do the same thing again. Now, as you can see, visually, it did bounce around a lot more than the M13. But it still has a pretty tight recoil pattern. Now, it wasn't in a circle or shape, but it is still pretty easy to manage. And lastly, now we actually have the BRUEN, and we're just going to do this gun by itself. And we'll quickly fire some bullets. We're not going to fire all of them, of course, because 100 rounds is insane. But let's fire it off, like, let's say about 50 rounds and see what it looks like. So it pretty much goes up and to the left, and it's not quite as harsh as some of the other weapons. But now let's try and control the recoil. So what we're trying to do is pull down and to the right and see what happens. So pulling, all I did there was pull down and to the right. I didn't do any extra corrections or anything like that. just pulling down and to the right gives you this kind of recoil pattern, and this is very accurate. So I've given you a lot of information in this video, so let's summarize this really quickly. So when it comes to LMGs, the BRUEN is hands down the best LMG in the game. The recoil is so easy to manage, and as long as you pull down and to the right, you're going to get such a consistent recoil pattern, which is very easy to control. You get some pretty decent TTKs with this gun as well. And like I said, it is just the best LMG in the game, so it's kind of in a category of its own here. Now from here on out, we're going to compare weapons that have similar TTKs at long range. And we've got the MILANO and the FARA. So if you can remember back, the MILANO and the FARA pretty much had the exact same TTK at long range. And I would actually give this one to the MILANO. Even though it is an SMG, it has the easier recoil pattern to manage. And it also has overall better movement and mobility. The ADS will be quicker. So even though you don't get the bullet velocity you get with the FARA, I do think the MILANO overall is a better long range rifle. Then we've got the super low recoil guns that don't do that much damage. Now, they do a bit more damage than they did before, of course, but this category is the one that I can't really decide on. Now, personally, after using the guns recently, I do think the M13 is just a little bit better, but that's just based off of feel. I can't really give any quantifiable reason to why it feels better, but it just does. Between these two guns, it is the hardest choice, and it's going to come down to which one you prefer using when it comes to the recoil pattern, but these are the lowest recoil guns in the game. And then when it comes to comparing the M4 and the KRIG just blows out the water, and I do think the KRIG is the best long-range rifle in the game at the moment. If you want good bullet velocity, low recoil, a decent TTK, a good headshot multiplier, and you don't want that stupid visual recoil, the KRIG is the best gun right now. It just performs very consistently all the time. The M4 is a really good option as well, but it just doesn't have as low recoil as the KRIG does. So in my opinion, the KRIG's #1. So there we have it. Those are the best long-range rifles that are currently inside Warzone at the moment. If you enjoyed this video and you learned something new, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we're trying to reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers. And click that link in the description down below and subscribe to our second channel. And thank you very much for watching.